All right, everybody, this is the Magic Show. This is an ocean show. So if you have any bodies of water you have in there, that could kind of work with lakes as well. I'm showing you ocean, but it could work for a lot of different things. Bodies of water as far as like starting off dark, going lighter, all of that good stuff. All right, so anyway, brush, when you're using a brush, this is always going to be the bright brush. For water, you're not using a round brush at all. Palette-wise, I'm going to start dark and then go lighter and lighter. So with this right here, I got the green, light green, a little bit of blue. This is raw umber. It's kind of a murky color, and then a little bit of black. Just a dot of it, not too much. And then that's going to be more or less the base coat. I'll maybe do a little more blue if you have a blue sky. And then I'll show you in this section right over here. So when you're doing the base coat on this, you're going to be going back and forth, just this way and that way. So you don't want to go at an angle, and I'll do some smaller strokes. But when you paint this for the base coat, one of the keys is that you don't want to like start with a hard edge brush like this. I want to kind of angle it so it's not this way, or like a diagonal. It's going to be curving like this, back and forth. So it's going to be curving, and the paint you put on there is going to be, you're going to start off kind of thick and then get lighter and lighter as you go. I'll do a hard edge over here. I'll make it kind of darker. Once again, all I'm doing is going back and forth, kind of like a windshield wiper. And the key is also to have a small stroke, so you don't want to go too big with the strokes at all. I'll let it fade out here pretty quick. And so this will take you a little bit just to get the base coat on. Changing color every once in a while. You know, I got the greenish, brownish blue. And one of the keys also is you want to start dark and get lighter and lighter. So if you try to mix up the color that you think your water is, it'll be hard to actually blend it in. And it will look kind of flat and cheap. So to give that depth to water, so it looks like it goes through, and there is actual depth to it. If you start dark and go lighter and lighter, you can kind of sense that it's not like just like one layer of paint. So you want, like, water should have like several layers of paint. I would say maybe 5 layers of paint. That would be good. So I would say a minimum of 5. So that's kind of like a base right there. So you see that greenish blue and everything. All right, so then after you have the base, then you come in there and you add like a little bit of a tint. And then every time you do another layer, it's going to be just a little bit lighter. Not like super lighter, kind of lighter. So this one, it's a little bit lighter again, more like the sky color. And back and forth, really soft. And the key to painting water is using a lot of water. Which is kind of a deep thing to say, I know. Might make a t-shirt out of that. All right, so now it's even a little bit lighter here. Small strokes though, so if you go like back and forth like this, it'll look terrible. Maybe not terrible, but not as good. All right, so then I'll add another white. Oceans do take a little while to paint because of all the layers of glazes you put on there. Now, you can see this is a little bit lighter here. I'll eventually shift to even smaller strokes. So my base coat, I'll do a little bit more of a larger strokes. Get to more details, it'll be smaller and smaller. I'll leave some of the dark areas in here. Those will turn out to be waves eventually. So if you do, watch this. So I'll do like a light version here, kind of a light line almost. I'll fade it out. Then I'll let some of the dark area show, like right in here. I'll leave that kind of dark. Go back over this lighter. And the gaps you have in between will turn out to look like waves eventually. A few more layers. All right, so now as I go back here, I'm gonna lighten it up even more. And if your sky is blue, then you can put blue in the reflections. But whatever color your sky is, you kind of need to integrate those colors back into your water. I'll go over here too. a little bit more on the green side. All right, so now mix up another tint, add a little more white, so it's gonna get even lighter. And right here, I'll test it out. You can see how light that is when I first put it on. And right in here, near the horizon, it should only be about 10% darker. But it does need to be darker though. So when I'm done with this area, it's gonna be about 10% darker than the horizon. And to make it look good, you really do wanna have like a light horizon on your water. And to make another thing for water, you want to make a note of is that you need something that reflects. We'll put like a sun or a moon or something right on top of it. That way you can have a good reflection. Then this is really light here. Small strokes, itty bitty baby strokes, back and forth. You can see how it's starting to lighten up and it's starting to mash right into the sky a little bit. And I still have some basic waves that are starting to happen here. Leaving the shadows there, coming up here on the top, back and forth strokes. Leave some of the darker areas, not all of them. And then that layer's almost done. When I said 5 layers for water, I might have meant maybe 7. All right, so this is another lighter value. Keep going lighter and lighter. And you might think, well, why didn't you just start with that light value? And once again, you can, but it won't have that depth that you want. So here, same thing. See how small the strokes are? Very patient, very trying to blend it as smooth as I can back here because those are far away, really small waves. And I'll show you how we add detail to the waves later. All right, so now it's starting to get that atmospheric perspective, more or less. I'm feeling kind of silly. Even to go even brighter. So that was kind of a crooked stroke, but now I'll flatten it out. So now, right here, it's pretty subtle, the difference between the water and the sky, which is what I want. Then I'll add more water to the paint. If your paint isn't watery enough, it won't look like water. And here, I'll go a little bit lighter here. Leave that little gap, and that'll end up looking like a wave when I'm done. So then I'll come in here. Oh, it's kind of magical looking. I want to go swimming. All right, so now you can kind of see that. So now back here, I could almost be done with this, but back here, I want to go even a little bit brighter. More highlights. Small strokes. So on a sideways notion, so here's how I'm painting. Instead of like this and curving the brush like that, so it starts off with nothing, then it hits the water and starts getting those highlights in there. I'll come all the way across over here. Maybe I'll leave that for another show. Yeah, I'll only do half. That sounds good. So now you can start seeing the waves coming up. And with water, I would choose a landscape kind of like this, where you have one big ass wave, then a medium ass wave, and then a small ass wave. So this is only like 1, 2, 3, 3 waves. If you have a landscape or a seascape that has like a bunch of different kind of waves on them and they're really tricky, yeah, it'll look good, but it's just a lot more work, and we don't have like tons of time to be able to finish all these things. So yeah, I would stick with a smaller amount of waves. One big one in the foreground and then kind of fade it out. All right, so that's enough for this part of it. I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see it better. And over here, maybe I'll keep it like that. All right, so then what I'm gonna do is I'll come in there, let me zoom out. So I'll show you also that wave that I'm gonna have on the foreground. I'll show you do it some big waves. All right, before I do that though, I'm gonna get my smaller bright brush, an itty bitty bright brush. there it is. Phew, that scared me for a second. All right, got my itty bitty bright brush. Now I'm gonna go in there, even smaller strokes, like little tiny guys, and that'll be reflecting in the background. So back here, the size of these guys are like minuscule. I'm almost just like tapping it on there. I'm not really, not brushing, I'm just kind of tapping, a little bit of a texture. This is about 10% lighter than the base that I have on there. Kind of see that now, it's coming out over here, the same thing. Little itty bitty baby waves. All right, now down here I'll do the same thing. Mix up a tint of that color. Like I said, these will eventually turn into like the larger waves. And you have a big wave, and then I want to do some smaller waves in between. So you don't want to do like just one wave, then flat. Right here, the highlights that I'm putting in, they're kind of like running diagonal, kind of like that one. So I exaggerated that so you can see it better. And zoom in here. Then here, as the waves come back, I'll cut in the base of this thing. And when I come back in with the smaller brush, the small round brush, that's where all the details happen. And they tend to look kind of magical. I would say pretty darn magical. I don't know about, yeah, no, pretty darn magical. Magical waves. All right. I could keep going on that for a while, but that's good enough for now. All right, so this way it's kind of like anchoring out that direction. Now the next phase, what we do is we get a nice round brush. Right here is a good one. And I'll start getting some of the foam on some of the waves. So once again, it's going to be kind of like rougher texture down here on the bottom. Tapping it in, kind of scumbling. And it doesn't have to be over the whole thing. So I'll have some of the waves here. I'm going flat on the top right here. Then a little more texture on the bottom. And right here, too systematic, so then I'll take some little dots, add more little tiny guys in there, itty bitty little, so just kind of barely tapping it. I'll have it go kind of flat. I can have another little chunk of foam over here. And have it kind of curve down so it ends. All right, so, and this is not like pure white, so this is like a dirty greenish white. I'll add some white onto it eventually, but not quite yet. That's gonna be near the end. That's where the magic happens. All right, so now I got the little wave here, cresting a little bit, and this one way back here, I'll do the same thing, but smaller little strokes. That little patch over here, scumble a little bit. Scumbelina, Scumbelina. All right, so now I have like two little waves right there. Those could almost be done. And this one up close, as long as your wave in the foreground looks really good, you're gonna be fine. All right, so now the wave on this one, I'm gonna have a lot more foam. I'll make the wave look a lot bigger by having the bubbles or the foam a little bit brighter and then taller up as well. Higher up. Big swishy thing coming down here. Just like that. I'll have it curve up here. Smidge. And I have a decent amount of water on the paint too. So in other words, white, I wouldn't call it a glaze, but it's like my brush is wet. I just dipped it in some more water. If it gets too distinct, take your finger and tap it out just a little bit. I'll show you the tapping thing again. Right here, I'm gonna go up a little bit higher for this wave. Like it's curling over a little bit. And all I'm doing is like tapping it, like tap, 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 taparoo. And because I have a lot of water on the brush, it's easy to blend with your finger. And I'll curve over there. So we have one big wave, 2, 3, 4. So it's kind of a small amount of waves. Over here, I'll do that later. So I'm only gonna do this little section right here. All right, so then I'll show you like a larger up close wave. So right here, we have like this wave kind of curling up, so I want to be able to see the light coming through it. That's why it's a little bit lighter. For those highlights, I'm going to use a little bit of permanent green and blue and white. And I'll test it out here. It's not bad. And then plenty of water. And I'll follow the contour of the wave itself. So the wave is kind of coming down. I'll do the same thing. Make it a little more blue, a little more green. Put both in there. And you can change color quite a bit, so it's like curving more or less. So all the green up here, I'll do the same thing. Tint, watery paint, following the contour of the wave itself. So it's going to be kind of curving up there. And I'll go up into the foams. I'll have the foam come on over that. So it's like systematic brushstrokes, more or less. If you want that, look like it's curling up into the wave itself. Now I'll try to add a little more blue, and I could even do a little bit of the raw umber in there. So it's not all bright. Otherwise, it might look a little too skittly. Skittlicious. So water comes down, it's gonna be a little more translucent. And I'm changing the color again. A little more of the blue. Blue, raw umber, permanent green. And once again, this is another one of those things where you want like a lot of layers of paint. I'll patch this in here. And making sure that I'm curling it enough. It's not bad. Could use a little more curl. Down here where the wave is smaller, it's not going to be as translucent because not enough light can get through it. So I'll have this darker here. Keep it lighter up there though. And I kind of do it gradient, so it goes like watercolor back down to the sand color. And I'll add a little bit more of a tint. Top up here. And I'm just kind of like swinging the brush. Boop, boop, boop. I don't know if that's really the sound. Maybe. Yeah, that's better. Ocean sound. All right, so now I'm starting to get those colors all the way across. Slowly but surely. And I could keep working on that, but I'm going to skip that for now. All right, so then I'm going to go back to my small round brush, do a couple different things. With the foam, so you're going to outline where the wave is. So like right here, we have the wave coming over here. Patch on the side here, so I got a little the line representing where the wave is. And then I'll take some thin, watery white. And with this, I'll start off solid here and fade it as it comes up the wave. So I'm gonna have the foam kind of trails going up this thing. So I'll start off solid. Got a little hole in my canvas. Don't know where that's from. So the foam's gonna be circular going up like this. So what I'm gonna do is slowly bend it up. And once again, this is pretty watery white. It's sort of like patterns of like a tree almost. You'll notice that it's not like straight. What I'm doing is, I'll do like a simple, I'll do a larger one so you can see it. So see these shapes here, they're kind of curvy. And that's what you want them to look like, the foam running up the wave. I'll go like thicker white down here. All that outline in his head in there. And really thin. And I'll let it come all the way up to the top of the wave. Now you should be going a lot slower than what I'm doing right now. If this was my project, I would be way slower. But magic shows speed. It's like everything else. So yeah, so kind of like do what I'm doing, but go slower. Then here it's gonna be almost all white, or it's crashing against the rock. Then if you don't like the way it's looking, it's probably because you're not using enough water. It's like a whole double check for yourself. Here, kind of the same thing. I'll get more of that to come up, even in this area. So it's kind of like really thin brush strokes, got cool little curved shapes to it. And then when I'm done with that, I'll pretend I'm done. Come in here. This is a little bit too bright, but I'll tone it down here in a second. Now the waves on this part, the crest, a lot of water and white. I'll start too dark, then I'll add some more highlights later. All right, so there's the top of the wave. I'll come in here and then scumble the wave foam going so you can actually see that foam curling over there a little bit. I'll add pure white here in a second. So right now it's kind of a dirty white. Getting that to curve over. And so once again, I only have like 3 waves really. I have this one, 2, 3. That's it. You don't need a bunch of them. You can simplify your waves too. So in the bigger wave you make this one, then you need less behind it because it kind of covers them. All right, now I'm using a little bit thicker white. Tapping that in there, a little tiny bit. And I'll do the same thing over here on this side. Tippy tap, taparoo. And then down here in the bottom, it looks a little lonely for some white paint. So I'll do the same thing down here. See how much brighter that is now. Super bright, thicker paint. Then I'll add water to it and then thin it out so it's not going to be just pure white. Now that you see the white though, you can see how dark the other stuff was. All right, so now I got watery paint. I'll fade that up into the other stuff. Tap a little bit with your fingers, put a little more paint on, and then tap. And for this area right here, where the water's kind of joining that, I could even add another little wave in here, so like a really small one. I'll show you that. So this is all the sand color. Then I could come in here with another wave. Going across here. So now it's just all sand with a little bit of an outline. Then this is a wave that went out a while ago. So it's going to be a little darker, a little more flat. Kind of going to vanishing point off to the side. All right, so it's like another layer of water coming in. And then with the water, as it hits the rocks, that's kind of fun too. You can even use a toothbrush on that. I'll show you a little bit of that. So yeah, waves kind of hitting behind this thing. I'll take white, a lot of water, scumble first. And then so I'm like scumbling it. What's gonna make it look better is when I actually take my finger and blur it out. So you can see how thin and watery this is. Then I'll take my finger and lightly tap it. That's a bit more of like a little light mist. Then on top of that, more details. Take a little toothbrush, mix that up into the white, and then I'll come in there with that and go over that a little bit with the toothbrush. Then take my hands, lightly tap it, or you can just spank it once. Tap or spank, your choice. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the little ocean show. And this is Ocean Show Part 1. I can show you Part 2 later.